Good morning, everyone. Can you hear us?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Mike.
Good morning. Let's see who we've got. I'm going across the screen. We've got George McGonigal, Kathy Covert's here with me, Dominic Recchio, Dave McKenna, committee member, and Amanda, committee member, Glenn, committee member, and Shauna, committee member. We've got Catherine Wagner, Kay. We've got Lori Kowalski, and we've got Michelle Coco in the background, Ashley Bryant, Jennifer Tavares. We've got Nick Murphy with us this morning, and Doreen.
Teresa.
I'm sorry?
And Teresa, I don't think you said Teresa.
Did I miss Teresa? Teresa Vatican's with us. Get everybody? Anybody else? There's a phone number there. What's that?
That might be
Is that Mike Blinkalaire?
Mike.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mike.
Morning.
Okay. Well, why don't we call to order, ask for any changes to the agenda? We're going to have a report from Nick Murphy a little bit later about some money. Let's take our minutes of July 6th. Committee members, does someone want to move them? I'm seeing Glenn's hand up, and I'm seeing a second by Shauna. Are there discussions about the minutes? Ready to vote? Amanda?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
I vote yes. Thank you. Who we've got from the Information Advisory Board this morning? Dominic, you want to give us a report this morning? Dominic's, let's come back to Dominic. Let's go to our college reps. Doreen, you want to bring us up to date on anything that's happening? We lose Doreen?
Nope, I'm here. I lost my Zoom window. I've got like 40 windows open.
Good morning.
Morning. So if I'm honest and truthful, there's not a lot happening.
That's fine.
We're kind of focused on, are we reopening and how are we reopening? We did have a glitch in our residence hall reporting. We've gotten that fixed. Once our registrar is done rearranging the entire academic calendar and helping us finish up online commencement this week, then we will focus on trying to report on our off-campus students. So that's kind of where we are.
We fully understand how busy and difficult a time of year it is for you up there. And we thank you for whatever efforts you can help us with when you get to them.
It's an interesting year.
Well, that's a good word for it. Kate, you want to talk about Cornell?
Sure. Have not yet begun the submission process of our data either on or off campus. We have the registrar's office, of course, is also swamped at Cornell, but they have initiated a change in our directory information policy for purposes of census, which will allow us to give the data we have or a more complete set of data to census that will include name, date of birth, and local address. For off-campus students, we have not previously requested off-campus addresses, or we haven't previously required, it's been requested. So until the registrar's office begins to pull the data, they won't know what percentage of students have shared in the past from last year their off-campus addresses. There's also been, we've had some back and forth with the census over the due date. They had initially, when they put the request out in late June for the first ever report of off-campus off-campus students, they had asked for it by July 31st. I said we couldn't manage that. They then said we could submit data until August 14th. We've been really clear that that is also not possible, and that it seems unreasonable to make a late in the game request like this, asking for the data before the on-campus data is even due, which is a longstanding request. So I continue to seek clarification on the deadlines. It would actually be nice, I think, for all higher ed if they just shifted it even further away so that their registrar's offices could get through this. But at this point, we're planning on submitting all the data by the on-campus deadline, and we hope that the census will be able to then still use the off-campus data. So that's what we're focusing on. I'm not sure, there's not much bandwidth for additional census work. I think, I'm not even sure what messaging is going to be part of orientation to students, whether we're still asking them to complete it individually. I think at this point, we're just trying to focus our efforts on the institutional response, because students are pretty overwhelmed with the rest of their lives right now. But it is a positive step that we're going to get to submit institutional data for both on and off-campus students. And at a minimum, off-campus will hope that the census can pull duplicate data and use just name and date of birth. But I don't know what other people's experiences have been, but it's a pretty fractured operation in terms of getting information from people. So, okay, that's it.
Mike Kaplinkalair, are you hearing anything about this issue of the timing that Kate's talking about?
Yes, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of control over that, and I apologize on behalf of the administration that they are fractured, as Kate summarized. But it is true that it's a very unfortunate request, given how much all the colleges and universities are going through with both students, returning both virtually and in person, and parent worries, and of course staff and faculty concerns. So they have number one priority, much higher than this request from the census. But given that, I do appreciate all the effort, and Doreen and Kate summarizing what they will do when they can get to it. And it is a new request, actually. It never has happened that the census has asked the universities and colleges to seek out off-campus information. So unfortunately, we're kind of building the airplane as we're flying it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is the letter that came to university presidents from Steve Dillingham, the head of the census, had no due date. It simply asked us to asked the university to give the name of a contact person, which was me. I've never received through those channels, there's never been an official statement that I've seen that gives a due date for the off-campus data. I received it going through Matthew Vincent, the regional person, director, who put me in touch with someone who was what did it say? He was a geographer for the Census Bureau who gave the due date to me. But I don't know, Doreen, if you've ever seen a due date sent to IC, because it just, it wasn't included in the request. So anyway, we'll just, as you say, Mike, we'll just get the census what we can when we can.
Yes, and thank you very much for that.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing a due date, but I will be honest and say I have not read all of the multiple emails from the census in full detail at this point.
Yeah.
So from a big picture perspective, I think this is good news for Tompkins County, though, that eventually, as people are probably aware, that the general census will be wrapping up October 31st. So eventually, whatever data is available, again, through the registrar and through only voluntary submission of off-campus addresses, it will still be a boost compared to what we would have had. And that's all good news for Tompkins County. And I hope that the overall census information gathering will be adjusted as we've spoken about before.
Yeah. One, and this is not really a higher ed issue per se, but George Ferrari from the Community Foundation had asked me to attend a meeting today to talk to some of their funders who wanted to know how they can support the census effort. I don't think there's really a role for support to Cornell, but if folks have a suggestion of who I should tell them to contact, please let me know. I don't know if it's Mike or Dominic.
I think we're going to have a report from Nick later on about some state funding, and I think any funder, Mike Lane can of course speak to this, but any funder funding that can match whatever the state is able to give would be gratefully received, but I'll let Mike answer that.
Okay, all right. So just let me know who to indicate as the contact for this.
At least one other comment or contact, I should say, from another private entity, wondering if they can help us with the census costs. So I'm still waiting on that as well. So feel free to have them contact me, have George contact me, and I'll probably send it on to Dominic and Nick and Amy as well. So it can be talked about.
Okay. Great.
Just to give it. Go ahead.
I just wanted to comment that at our last meeting, we talked about sending a letter to the head of the census nationally and at the state level. And Mike Kaplik-Allaire furnished us with those names and addresses. And those letters did go out requesting that they use their efforts to try to get those congressional hearings about the college communities having difficulty getting accurate counts of the students in their municipalities. So I wanted to tell you those letters were sent.
Thank you. I could give a little very brief update. I think most of you got what Jennifer Carrier sent last week, so I won't duplicate that, but I can summarize that between now and the end of September, there is still a need for people being hired to be enumerators. It'll be very short term and very temporary, but if people know of people who are seeking temporary part-time work through the end of October, they can just visit 2020census.gov/jobs. The training has been happening the last few weeks, and the first enumerators in Tompkins County, we did have an advanced crew, but the first regular enumerators are going to start going door to door as of the 11th, the week from tomorrow. We did have something called Push Week last week. The main goal of that was to try to use all the different mechanisms and avenues we have to remind people to complete the census so that it's as few households as possible would remain to have people knock on their doors. And then this week, there's another kind of, I would call it a secondary push or a wave for rural areas. It's called the Rural Week of Action, but it's really basically the same message, whether it's any of the upstate New York counties who are considered rural. Please redouble your efforts to get the word out, whatever mechanism you use, whether it's a sign in front of your house, whether it's a bus ad or a flyer or social media. Remind people that the more they can complete it before the 11th, the less need there is for people to knock on their door. People may or may not be visiting that live response rate link. I've sent it before, and I think Jennifer had sent it before. But Tompkins County is at 59.9% response, which is in general okay. We hope to, crest 60% quite soon.
Mike, would you please repeat that response rate?
Yes. So I'll just give New York in general is 58.5. Tompkins County is 59.9. So we're about to crest 60. Just for some reference of some neighboring counties, Chemung is at 65.5. Schuyler on another side of us is at 54. 0.2. So, you know, we're ahead of the state. We're behind a national number, but I think already we can see that we're doing okay. We're not exceptional by any means, but we're not in a lower tier either. But when the data eventually gets regarding students, I expect that to pop up, but that will be when it happens. Mike,
You mentioned about Jennifer and her report that she gave to us electronically. She's no longer serving Tompkins County? Is that what's happening?
Yes, she's actually moved on to a new role. So I'll be covering all of Tompkins County now, and I've got 5 other counties I serve, because as partnership specialists kind of roll off service to the upstate area, those of us who remain are taking up a little bit more counties. So I've got six upstate New York counties, and Tompkins being one of them, including what Jennifer was covering in Tompkins County.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mike? Nancy Zahler is here with us, and she's got her hand waving.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't
That's all right.
do that. My question, Mike, is we saw in the news recently that the administration was talking about shortening the response time for the census and separating out, for districting purposes, the non-residents. Do you know anything more about either of those? Shortening up the time was probably the most relevant.
Yeah, I certainly cannot speak to non-residents. That's a presidential proclamation that's being contested in the courts. But regarding the shortening, I think, as we have said pretty much since COVID hit, the census has officially asked Congress for a 4-month extension, and that stands. We believe that will be honored, but we also understand that this press release also has a different sense of immediacy in terms of getting the data back to the president and Congress. But the reality of how quickly, with enumerators closing up their work as of October 31st, how quickly that data can be turned around, I think is still probably in that April 1st to April 30th zone. The request from the census to congressional leaders and the president is to allow us not to turn it in on December 31st, which would be virtually impossible, that turnaround from October 31st, but to allow it to be as late as, well, a realistic time frame is April 30th.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, could I ask,
think
is there any specific bill on that, or is that, how does that work? Or my point is, what's the public advocacy on that? How do we nudge our own representatives to support that?
It's a similar letter that Mike Lane referenced. The legislature could write, individuals can write, town boards can write and say, we encourage the Congress to be healthfully understanding of how much time it takes to turn around data, and we encourage you honor the census's request if that's indeed what you'd like to honor. If someone on this call has more urgency, they can say, we agree with the press information that's come out recently that the census should be pressed and they should try to turn that data around sooner. But it's exactly the same context, exactly the same way that you would express your opinion to our elected officials.
Yeah, there's also, may I, Mike?
Go ahead, Nancy.
There's also I received on Friday an email from Allison Hunt, Tom Reed's staff, saying that he is hosting one of his regular calls today at 2 p.m. And so if it's local elected officials, I'm not entirely sure the distribution list, but if anybody, I mean, I would assume that everybody in this meeting, for the most part, is a local elected official and should theoretically be.
Well, some are and some aren't.
I could forward that to you if you want.
That'd be great. And there was a NISAC, New York State Association of Counties briefing. Well, it was actually a number of partners, particularly from the immigrant community in New York City, that NISAC, Steve Aquario, sent out. It was very, very short notice. I appreciate Kathy Covert for getting it out, and we sent that on to other counties, a briefing last Wednesday. So people are doing as much as they can to stay on top of the evolving news. I suspect most people on this call are probably aware that I have to basically talk in code.
Mm-hmm. Understood.
I think we understand that. Thank you. Anything else for Mike Kaplinkalair?
No, just thank you very much for what you're doing. I look forward to Nick's report and maybe jazzing up some bus signs and some yard signs and other priorities.
Okay. I want to turn to Nick Murphy at this point. Nick, you've got some news for us. Can you tell us what's happening financially wise?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, so as you all know, over the winter, we were in the process of applying for this grant through Empire State Development. And then, next thing we knew, COVID-19 hit and everything was sort of on hold. I have not heard anything from them until this past Friday afternoon. And so I'll just kind of go through the email and sort of hit the bullet points here. So the first thing is that they want us to rework our proposal to fit in, number one, activities that meet their guidelines for safe distancing. So we can't really have, some of the nonprofits that we were working with were planning on doing like in-person events with small groups. That's not allowable anymore. So they did give us a small list of things that are allowable. So it's things like radio ads and billboards and mostly like advertisements, things that you wouldn't have a group of people meeting to do. So we have to rework that to fit with the safe distancing standards. The other thing that, quite frankly, Amy and I are a little bit confused about is they sent us a not-for-profit list, and there's only 5 non-for-profits on here. And so there's some confusion on our end if whether or not those are the nonprofits that they're saying we can only work with or what. And one of them includes Cornell Cooperative Extension of Schuyler County. So that confused me. I'm not sure. So this is all coming from the state, obviously. And so I think we're going to have to be in contact with Empire State Development to get to, answer some of those questions. The other big thing is that of our initial request, they're only going to allocate 50%. So our original request was for around 60,000. So that would obviously cut us down to around 30,000. And there's a new deadline for this new grant proposal, and that's August 10th. So that's a week from today. But it's obviously not a lot of time to get questions answered, rework the proposal, and figure out how we're going to do what we want to do with only 30,000, which really doesn't go as far as you'd think, instead of 60,000. So I will say with the 10,000 that the legislature appropriated, Dominic and I have been working on, we are already doing some of those bus signs, lawn signs, things like that. So, you can do with that what you will. But Mike, I think Amy and I do want to probably speak more with you on this, and Dominic too, just to get some of these questions ironed out and figure out a way forward.
Certainly. I would just point out that what's this, the third rendition of trying to rewrite this grant money? And each time it's gone down. We started at what, 130,000 they were going to give us, or 113? I can't remember.
Yeah.
And now it's come down again. And thanks to you and Amy particularly for the work you've been doing here on this, trying to keep that in play for us. Although as we get closer to the the end here. You know, it's kind of frustrating not being able to have this to do some of the work. We did, folks, we did approve at the legislature the $10,000 from contingency. So we do have that money available if we need it. And then of course we're now receiving these possible private funding opportunities that have been talked to, we've just heard about on this. So Nick, thank you for your efforts there. Questions for Nick about this communication from the state? Okay, then let's go to Dominic. Dominic, can you tell us about what the PIAB's been doing and where we are with our potential advertising campaign?
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for your patience earlier. My phone was ringing off the hook from something.
We understand.
If you all don't mind, I'm going to share my screen and I can show you some of the advertisements that have started going up this week.
Great.
The $10,000 you referenced there's a budget attached to that includes lawn signs, bus ads, ads in the Cornell Daily Sun and the Ithaca newspaper, both their online pieces and some social media advertising as well, much of which kicked off this week. And I'll show you a few examples of that. Let me share this here. All right, so you should be able to see. This is what the yard signs. This is what the yard signs will look like. Students count in Tompkins County, the language that we worked out. So there'll be, I believe, 60 of these yard signs printed by Ithaca College's print shop. And so those will be, I'm going to work directly with some of the elected officials in the particular areas where we are low on count. And we know that our, student count is the particular, area of most need. So we decided to use that for these here. Similar ad that's going to run in the Cornell Daily Sun. And actually, if you go to the Cornell Daily Sun today, you'll see these have started to run there. This is what some of the ads will look like for the college newspaper online. I will say finding imagery of folks served to be a particular difficulty, but thank you to folks from Ithaca College who got some photos approved for us, and Jennifer from the chamber allowing us to use a few from the Live in Ithaca campaign as well. So that's that one. On the bus, we have a series of ads that'll be running. These are called queen size ads that'll run on one side of the bus, larger king size ads on the other side, and then tail ads. And so these will run on multiple buses over the course of a month. And actually seeing how many students have started to return to the area, and the TCATs are, I've seen more folks on those, although it's anecdotal, but I certainly think there's an uptick in people in the community. So I think it's a really good time for the campaign to launch in terms of being in all those places. And we went with the colors and the fonts and everything are the Census is, it's their brand standards that we went with. So I tried to stay within what they had and didn't stretch beyond that very much.
Dominic, what about advertising on the social media platforms?
We'll probably use similar ads to these, awaiting a little bit more potential photography of some folks, seeing what access to things we can get from Cornell's photo database or otherwise. And there's a thread we're working on with the PIAB to see what we might be able to do there. But yeah, all of those are lined up to go. I wanted to see how these started to trickle out first, and then we'll put those on social media. I'd also like to get some photos of the yard signs in people's yards and share those as well. So it has that sort of local connection in that way, or on the TCAT.
I guess I'm wondering if now that we might have a little bit more money with the state, should we increase the order of those yard signs? 60 doesn't seem a lot for the whole county.
Yes, it certainly doesn't. Trying to fit it all within the original budget was a part of the consideration. and that we were going to focus on particularly the student turnout in the, on South Hill and in College Town and in those areas. But yeah, we could, I'll connect with Nick and we'll see what other grant funding might look like and see if we can up the yard signs and other things.
Questions for Nick? Amanda?
Not a question. I just want to thank you, Dominic, for working on this. I mean, it's so great to see the signs and having it come together. So just a lot of appreciation and appreciation for Nick too, for working on the state side of things. So
thanks, Amanda.
Great. It's great work. Thank you.
We've been lucky to have a really good team with Dom and Nick, I'll tell you.
Thank you.
And Amy in the background.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Dominic? Boy, you guys are easy this morning. Well, why don't we talk about if there's any news from the different representatives. Let's start with committee members. Are there any reports that any of the four of you would like to mention? Amanda or Shauna or Glenn or Dave? I'm seeing head shaking no. Okay. Well, then I'm going to go across the screen here and let's see who we've got. Lori, is there something you'd like to report to us about this morning?
Sure, thank you. Good morning. Thank you for including me. So again, I represent Catholic Charities.
Of course.
Here in Tompkins County. So in terms of our efforts, just to update you a little bit, I hired through the county a fine young man through the Summer Youth Employment Project. Very glad to be working with that team. They've just been amazing. So we hired him through those funds that the county has thankfully gotten from New York State, specifically for this census project. So he has called about 790 people, which is pretty impressive, I think. These are clients of Catholic Charities, people we've helped in the last year and a half. That's how far back we went. Now, he certainly hasn't spoken to 790 people about the census. Obviously, a lot of people's phones run out of minutes and they change their carriers and everything else. But he's left a lot of messages on voicemail and he has spoken directly to several people. But we have a message, have you filled out the census? And a few people have, and if you haven't, how do you do so? So he has maybe 300 or 400 more calls to make out of our list, but we think, that's targeting a demographic that very well might not have heard about the census or had a chance to really understand what it's about. This is going to be, predominantly pretty low income people, marginalized people. So we hope that's going to be helpful. What I have a little more hope for is the next step, which would be texting them, because the data show that people don't necessarily pay attention to their phone. They don't answer their phone. They don't necessarily listen to voicemail, but text messages are something people do almost immediately take a look at. I think that would bear out with people on this call. Would you shake your head? I always look at a text message, right? So I've been trying to reach out to some people, really different people with these statewide funding networks and other kinds of coalitions to ask the question about texting. Now, there are folks doing texting through mass texting and just, I think, each number at a time. My question is still, is there a way we could get a program to do mass texting, but not through some other list that's generated from somewhere else, but from our own list, from the folks that we have who have a connection to Catholic Charities? So I guess that would just be my first question to I know Dominic and I had some email communication about this, but just to ask, is that something the county is considering doing? I mean, obviously you have or the city at least has an a text alert system. So, is that something that would be possible to put out for census publicity? And if it is there a way we could get our phone numbers from our clients somehow in on that? So I guess I just want to ask that question first off.
Dominic, do you want to respond?
we do have the Swift 911 system, which is mainly used for emergencies. I have started into a little bit around if there's other policies on that. We've used it very sparingly throughout COVID-19, but I'll reach back out to folks on the policy end of Swift 911, especially around the text messages, which I believe we have 4,000 to 5,000 cell phone numbers. And I think we'd be happy to input some of your clients into that system. It's useful for a lot of reasons, beyond, but certainly I'll reach out and see if there's any further policies on when to use that.
I mean, that would be helpful. I don't want to, share numbers if people don't want to be on an alert system, but it's worth a conversation to at least see how we can do that. Not that it wouldn't be helpful for people to be on an alert system, but I don't know if you can sort of involuntarily add them. But I do think just the hours it's going to take to text people is going to be pretty intensive. It's all right. I mean, he's working 25 hours a week. He's a very young, a rising high school freshman, but he's doing a very nice job. But so we could do that, but I think there could be, ways we could use technology that would be a little smarter.
What's his first name?
His first name is Delvin. And
please extend the thanks of this committee and the county for his work.
Sure, I will. And I'm very grateful that he's able to do this through the SYEP program. They've been great. And he's at a distance. It's remote. He's at home doing this, so it's he's safe. There's no risk there. So that's really good. Our other news is we are planning a soft opening of our free clothing closet as of tomorrow at our building at 324 West Buffalo Street. It's a pretty popular place for a lot of folks. It's going to be a very much less busy place because we can only let one person in at a time, very limited time that they will be able to stay in the free clothing closet. But my hope is, and we're not sort of yelling that from the mountaintops. We're letting some of our agencies that we collaborate with know that for their clients who are in need of work clothes or whatever they need, along the way in terms of clothing and housewares. But I'm hoping that as that starts to happen, we would have a little bit of an opportunity to talk directly with clients about the census and give them the opportunity to fill it out. We have some tablets, right there. If you don't have internet at home, if your phone's not working, do it right here. And we even have some incentives for them to do that, thanks to some funding we received. So, obviously we had big plans to do a lot of outreach along those lines before the lockdown, and we're hoping this might be a little toe in the water to start that back up again. I don't know, in terms of other places we could do outreach or other ways we could give people that opportunity. The census has a mobile access program. I did go down when the gentleman from the census was at Loaves and Fishes Thursday evening, but he was just handing out flyers. He was not offering people a chance to actually go online and do the census. So I was disappointed by that. I thought that was the whole point, but it's what he was doing. He's just sort of handing out flyers saying hello. So, I think if census workers were able to do something that was a little more direct and actually safely sanitized, give people access to a tablet, that might make some sense. I don't think handing folks a flyer necessarily makes a darn bit of difference, but I think, if there are ways that we can get to people who aren't necessarily on the radar, I'm talking low-income folks, maybe immigrant folks, between Delvin and me, we could possibly do some face-to-face as long as we can, as long as we can do it safely. So I guess I just put that out there as well. If there are ways that, I know everything is canceled, but if there are any kind of opportunities where there are folks that we could have some conversations with, I would love to know that and would offer to, to try to make that happen, that they would then have access to the internet to be able to fill the questionnaire out. So if anybody has ideas on that, please let me know that right now too.
You could certainly talk to our IT department. You could talk to Greg Potter, see if he has any ideas about that electronic, because we were going to try to do some outreach with electronics before COVID hit. We haven't been able to do that, but you certainly give him a call.
I mean, we have tablets. I think we're ready to go. We probably need a hotspot. We have to do a few things technologically. I want to know where the people are. And I know that's the
Okay.
hardest question.
Food pantries.
Nancy?
Yeah, I just want to make a suggestion based on Lori's ideas that the blue mutual aid food cabinets are a place that people frequent. And I didn't know whether any census materials getting posted on the front of those, maybe hooking up with some of the mutual aid, Tompkins County mutual aid people might be a way to do it. We've been helping to restock a cabinet down by the free clinic, and it gets emptied twice a day. So a lot of people are taking advantage of that. They may or may not see it. They may or may not, as you say, react to a flyer. But I also just, well, I'll just finish up. I had also gotten an email from a local resident who said that during the last census, they had some of our post office box patrons were having difficulty getting census materials. And I reached out to Micah Plinkalayer, who was very helpful in filling me in about what the outreach has been to those with post office boxes. We've sent an outreach notice through our town's listserv, and that Jacksonville community has its own. I will today follow up to send another update out to all the towns, all the municipalities who participate in TCOG. And George, I want to thank you sort of in person for having joined, because I know when I couldn't make some meetings, you joined in, and I was grateful for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. Lori, I really appreciate it. Your organization is really getting to some of the folks that we really need to hear the message about the census, and we thank you for that. Anything else for Lori? Lori?
Mike, if I could jump in.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify, Lori, the people who were at Loaves and Fishes did actually have tablets, and they were asking, have you completed the census? At least that was their report to me, and they did have the capability at that moment. Their report back was that those who they asked had already completed it. And to Nancy's point, I think Lori also is aware of this, we actually have had census employees at food pantries, whether it's drive-through or other ways. Now, it's not as easy when it's a drive-through food pantry with 500 cars to have people get out of their car and walk over to someone with a tablet and kind of stop their flow. But we do have the capability, and I concur with Lori that if people have known sites where people will be gathering with social distancing that we can plan ahead for, we can get census representatives there with iPads. For instance, the store in College Town that Ithaca Bakery used to occupy, when Ithaca Bakery reopened for 4 days in that period of time in the reopening, we will have census reps with tables, particularly for that constituency in College Town that might have not completed the census yet. So the more we are aware of when people are gathering in those kinds of places, particularly in the constituency areas that we're trying to reach, the more we can try to get reps there with a table, with a tablet, with flyers, et cetera. And Nancy, I will follow up with mutual aid regarding the food cabinets. I've been working very hard, almost every food pantry I'm aware of, to get flyers to those pantries. But you're right, the mutual aid cabinets we haven't necessarily tackled, so I'll follow up.
Okay. Thank you, Lori. Let's move on. Ashley? I'm sorry?
Good morning. How are you today?
Good. How are you? Thanks for being here.
Thank you. So I represent Tompkins Community Action, and really our efforts have been continued with what we have been doing. We recently participated with the Community Action Partnership Census True for You event, and that was a big push to encourage the self-response before the enumerators start going door to door. Our agency issued a staff survey to kind of see what the self-response rate was amongst our staff. And good news, we're at 88%. So it was nice to see that our efforts have been reaching our staff. We continue to do outreach through our agency-wide emails, our social media, through Facebook and Instagram. We continue to administer our flyers in our food pantry distribution, as well as our Head Start meals. And we have multiple conversations by word of mouth with our families that we're case managing. And really, that's the best that we're doing at the moment. And that's all that I have.
Are there questions for Ashley?
Yes. Oh.
What's that?
Okay, thank you.
All righty. Thank you for being here and for the efforts that your group is doing.
So Ashley, could I just ask quickly,
Lori?
what are folks saying to you when you talk? I mean, I suppose you're doing a lot of things over the phone
Yeah.
as opposed to face, but have you found that a lot of your families have already filled it out, or do they know about it?
The majority of our families have filled them out.
Great.
The ones that haven't, the replies that we've been receiving are, it's just been too busy with the pandemic. So we just encourage, this is assisting our federal funding and the programs that we offer here. Your response counts and matters. So hopefully we're getting through to those individuals.
It's so esoteric. It's hard for folks, but I think the other message is, particularly for people of color, is that they have been historically undercounted, just like they have been historically denied access to the ballot. And if that's one more piece of information that can be a motivator, I think we have to be saying that as well. I mean, there are certainly leaders of color out there saying that and trying to remind people that it is part of this greater need for greater racial justice. So just one more thing.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Teresa.
Hey everyone. So on the library's front, we have a couple things going on. Enumerator training has been taking place in the Borg-Warner room. It started on July 31st and it ends on August 5th, so Wednesday. It goes from 8 to 1 and they are using our Borg-Warner room. And so we've been able to do that. I had to disarm the building on Saturday so that they could get in. So I got to meet with them a little bit, but that's been going well. We also are going to have a soft opening of census stations, 2 census stations, which are internet based, starting on August 11th. Those will be available on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays on our lobby pickup days. I can explain what that is, but that's when people pick up their materials and they actually enter the library. We will have 2 stations available that are 6 feet distance apart, that people can do their census. And I know that this information was sent to Dominic so it could be advertised.
Yep.
The library, it'll also be on the library website this week. So that'll be available for people that haven't completed their census. We're including flyers and materials that Jennifer left me in all of our bags. When people come and pick up materials now, we put all their books in bags, either through curbside pickup or lobby pickup. They're always going to get a census information on how to do it. As for the other libraries in the county, I did email after the last meeting, and I did hear from Susie Gutenberg about Lansing that they were doing materials in the bags as well. And when I looked at the status of what these libraries are doing currently, it looks like most are only doing either curbside or in library pickup of materials still. And it looks like Dryden will be starting appointment only for people to come into the library on August 3rd. So the census stations that we will have, you're really limited to enter through the back door, which is near the garage, and you go out what used to be our front door, which has now become our basic exit because we have separate entrances and exits due to the pandemic and what we have to do. But they will be able to come in, and then they pretty much, once they're done with the census, will be leaving, and they will be required to wear a mask the entire time they're there. And we do have masks that we're providing for people that do not bring theirs in. And I think that's about it on the library side. We'll see how it goes starting next week. Any
Thank you,
questions?
Teresa. Questions for Teresa? We certainly appreciate the efforts you've had all along on our census project here.
Yeah, we also have signs in our windows. So if there's more signs that people are creating, we could put those in our front windows. So people that are, because the buses are out front. So we always have the bus, but like the people that take the buses walking in front of the building. So we're more than willing to take more signs.
Great. George?
I really don't have anything to report.
Okay, is there anything happening at the city level, or are they kind of relying on the county here?
I'll double check with Julie Kahn.
You just froze on us.
The county thing.
You froze on us a minute.
Oh,
George.
I'm sorry.
Could you repeat that?
I have a lousy connection. I don't know. I'll check with Julie Conlon about whether we're putting census information on our city website.
Thank you.
But I can't say. I'll suggest that Wednesday when we meet.
Thank you. Nancy, are any other questions for George first, I guess? Let's go to Nancy.
Pretty much, I realized I did my report out of turn just in terms of some of the outreach we've done within the town of Ulysses, and I'm going to resend to TCOG the link where they can check their own town response rates as a incentive for increasing their outreach. And I've got I will share the message I put out on our town listserv to make it easy for them to put another electronic push for where they are. I will also, in light of the conversation about the libraries, we'll double check with our Trumansburg Library to see whether during their curbside distribution, whether they're including materials. I'm sure they'll be willing to do that. And if we don't have enough extras, I certainly know how to get in touch with Mike for that. So thanks.
Good. Questions for Nancy?
I just want to interrupt briefly. I have to go. So thank you for your work, and
thanks for joining us, George.
Yeah, I'll try to make it next time. Thanks.
I guess I have a little curiosity, and that is early on, certainly last fall, we had a lot of discussion about trying to reach out to minority communities, immigrant, non-English speaking communities and things like that. And we seem to have lost some of the folks that were here with us about that. And I wonder, Mike Linkelaire, is there anything you can tell us about efforts that being made to reach some of the non-English speakers, for example?
Yes, thank you. We are, as mentioned before, trying to table at various events where there are any kind of gathering, but it is not easy to understand. You don't want to necessarily stereotype that a food pantry would be an area where you might get a greater population of immigrants. But the more information we can get about gatherings, we have worked with Spanish-speaking media in Tompkins and beyond with language-appropriate resources, and worked with Cornell Outreach in terms of immigrant services as well. Of course, Catholic Charities has that outreach, but turning over the rocks that we can and trying to get that word out, but using as many different messaging formats as we can.
Lori?
I would just add, we, Catholic Charities, as Mike mentioned, through our immigrant services program, we have a staff member from the Burmese community who's definitely done outreach with people from the Karen speaking community here in our area. I think she knows just about everybody. It's a pretty tight-knit community, so that, we feel that community has been really brought up to speed to participate. I also have been in communication with Open Door English, which is the English language program out, which is housed in the First Presbyterian Church, but it's its own fairly new little not-for-profit. And they also, even through Zoom classes, we're going to get the word out about the census, because that was a population they didn't realize if they were here, for instance, on a student visa or as a trailing spouse of somebody who's here on a student visa. There was not necessarily the full understanding that they also should be counted. So I think we got that message across, and they were going to, reiterate that with their students. So that, that is another effort. I could probably check back in on that, but that was one thing. That was one other place to, to put that message out to.
Nancy's got her hand up.
Yeah, just since the community is fortunate enough to have the Alex Haley pool reopen, I was talking with someone who has been down there and was using it very gratefully, and there definitely are people turning up there. I don't know exactly all the background, but that seems like a great sort of tabling kind of place to set up on a hot day at the Alex Haley pool.
I can work with Leslyn and others at GIAC to arrange that. Thank you.
Yep.
Kay Wagner. You got on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, as you can imagine, a lot of our focus right now with the League of Women Voters has been how are we going to get people registered to vote? So we are working with the three, TC3, Cornell, Ithaca College. We've got connections there that we're working with. But we're going to do a lot of flyers because normally we get a lot of people registering at things like Apple Festival and these various things that go on in the community. And since those aren't going to happen, or we may not feel comfortable tabling there at these really large events, we're going to be doing a lot of flyers. So one thing was that if we end up putting flyers into bags or leaving them in places where there isn't already census material, then we could be adding that there too. So I guess we'll try to keep in touch with Michael about where some of the places where we'll be putting flyers and seeing if there's census material we should add to it. Also, I guess we'd simply appreciate from all of you if you have suggestions as to where we should put flyers and maybe even stacks of registration forms, things like that. We're going to go through a few phases. The first phase will be register to vote. This is what you do. And the only place they can register online is through the DMV. So those who don't have driver's licenses can't really do it online. And then we'll go through a phase of out and vote, make sure you're registered, and then get out and vote. And here's early voting and all those things. So as we go through all of this, we can easily, add in census material at the same time. And it's just a question of, first of all, getting input from people as to where would be a good place for us to put flyers and registration forms and things like that. And at the same time, what places where we do that could use the census forms. So that's kind of where we're at on things right now. And I know we've been trying to encourage our members to put information out on all the listservs they're on. I know I'm on a whole lot of environmental listservs, so particularly local ones. And so I put, census stuff out on that and try to get people spreading the word that way.
That's great.
So I guess that's it.
Questions for Kay? Did I miss anyone?
Jennifer.
Who?
Jennifer.
Oh, Jennifer Tavares. I guess I did miss you. You've
It's on page 2.
taken your camera off there. Would you like to talk to us, Jennifer?
Sitting here in photographic format all day so far. I don't have a lot to say. I'm trying to, push some reminders out in some of our emails. I think if there's a specific flyer or any kind of format that employers could be sharing around their workplaces or internal emails to remind people, that would be nice. So I don't know, I've been just going through the census social media, resource pages and grabbing images and sharing them here and there or inserting them. But if there's something specific the county would like to share or that Dominic has, it might be a little more locally messaged that way. But just, we're here if anyone wants any more outreach directly through businesses and employers to try to get more complete participation among.
Jennifer, do you have feedback from businesses about census at all? Are we hearing anything?
Not really, but it hasn't been a big topic of conversation. Just like so many other groups, I think people have so much going on. It's probably, barely on people's radar, aside from whatever information they're seeing elsewhere. I will say every time I share anything or, we share things, people do respond and say, already took it, so there's some of that positive engagement, which is good. And I think it's good for people to see that too. But it's just not something with everything else going on. It's not really a big topic. No one's really come to me and asked questions about it, which is why I think if we tried to, ask for some help from employers or I don't know. I think we've talked about SHRM before. I don't know whether, the HR network has been engaged in any way in helping push some messaging out, just for reminders for people to take the census. But it would be nice maybe to just collaborate on, if we just had a series of images and messages, and then we had a plan of distributing them out over a few weeks, just doing it once and then putting it back in again in another month or something, or every 2 months or something isn't going to have the same impact. So
I think probably Dominic is the right person to talk to about that, since he's been directing a lot of that for us.
Yeah, I know. I think I know how to find him. Me.
In fact, folks don't know, Dominic used to work for Jennifer. Any other questions for Jennifer? Anyone else I missed? All right. Looks like our next meeting is going to be on September 7th. Take that back. Our meeting would be on September 7th, which is Labor Day. I'm assuming that this group does not want to meet on Labor Day. So what would you like to do? Do you want to go to Tuesday, the following week on Monday? What would work best for folks? Let's go to the committee first, I guess.
Following Monday works for me, Mike.
I'm sorry, David?
Following Monday's okay with me.
Want to go to the following Monday, which would be the 14th? Does that work for folks?
It'd be fine.
All right, let's plan on doing that at 9 o'clock, the same way. Interesting to think.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, PAB does meet at 10, so that would just be one thing to keep in mind.
All right, well, we've been getting done, and we've been getting done within an hour, most of these meetings. So let's see if we can remind us about that next time. We'll try to bring it to a close even quicker. I'm just sitting here thinking about the fact that when we started this committee in 2019, we figured we'd wrap up by about July of this year. So things happen, and we're going to continue until we get through this, certainly through October and November probably. So I guess we're in there for the year, and I want to thank all of you for hanging in there with us. It makes a difference, and we appreciate it. Anything else for the good of the cause here this morning?
Michael, this is Mike Blinkalair. I just want to mention to either Michelle or Kathy Covert that I did drop off a bag of materials for all the legislators. I know they've gotten stuff before, but I got, just what's called census swag, a water bottle, a fan, and more flyers for individual legislators when they stop by and get their materials for meetings. They can pick that up as well and help distribute it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, Kathy doesn't think she's received it yet.
No, I'm just saying legislators don't come in.
Oh, I'm sorry. I take that back. Kathy has it. What she's saying to me is that we aren't getting as many legislators coming into the legislative chambers now because of the Zoom meeting. So maybe a while to get into their hands.
Okay.
Okay.
Michael,
Yes.
did you see that chat that said that somebody's not getting the agenda? Was it Jennifer?
Who didn't get the, I'm sorry, no, I haven't been reading the chats.
And it could be that I missed something, but I went searching through my email looking for the agenda packet and the minutes, and all I could find was the meeting invitation. I didn't find the actual packet. I did go and find it on the county's website, but I'm wondering if it's getting quarantined or put somewhere, or if it's just that we're supposed to go find it on the county website.
No, I know it was sent out to committee.
Okay.
Let's ask Kathy here.
Yeah, Jennifer, I have a distribution list. I'll check to make sure you're on it. But it does go out in advance of the meeting by separate email.
Okay. I got your calendar invitation, so I would have assumed I would also get whatever else.
Separately.
And that's a separate distribution list, but check your junk mail too. Sometimes those emails will go into like a junk mail.
Okay. I mean, it's not a big deal. I can find it on the website, but I felt a little lost when you were starting to refer to the agenda and minutes and whatnot. So,
Are there any others that are not getting the agenda? Okay, so it must be a glitch with yours, Jennifer. We'll see what we can do.
I might have missed it. My Outlook search is not always the best for sure. So, thank you.
Well, thanks for bringing it to our attention. I guess we'll close the meeting then. Motion to adjourn by somebody. By Glenn, seconded by Amanda. So we're adjourned. Thank you all. We'll talk to you next month.
Thank you.
Well, stay healthy.
Thanks, Mike. Bye.